So good afternoon and welcome everyone to another HumanWare Live webinar. I am Andrew Flattress, HumanWare's Braille Product Manager, and today's topic is teaching and monitoring the progress of students learning Braille. And joining me across the pond in what is a beautiful but windy city of Chicago is my good friend and brand ambassador of blindness products, Peter Chusik.
How's it going, everybody?
So before we start, I would like to have a quick, open up a quick poll for our marketeers at HumanWare. And the question that we have is where did you hear about this webinar? And we have the following options. We have from the HumanWare Buddy application, social media, HumanWare email, or word of mouth. Okay, I'm just going to launch that poll in now for you.
So Andrew, my hope, just while we conduct this poll, my hope is that word of mouth will be the #1 option because it means everybody is talking about you.
Not all you, perhaps.
Somebody.
So where did you hear about this webinar? HumanWare Buddy application, social media, HumanWare email, or word of mouth? Okay, a couple of seconds. A few more attendees that need to vote. Okay, so we see that the HumanWare email has won the poll. 79% of people were informed by HumanWare email. Word of mouth, 15%, and the Buddy application and social media share each at 3%. Thank you very much.
I must say, anytime I can beat out an app or social media, I'm proud of myself, and you should be too, Andrew. Word of mouth is where it's at.
Okay, so let's go on to the next following slides. Okay, so the learn objectives. So participants today will learn how to use the Takeoff UEB curriculum to teach Braille. We'll learn how to use the new learning tables while following the Takeoff curriculum. And finally, participants will learn how to track student progress through personalized and predetermined lessons using the HumanWare Buddy application. So many of you have probably heard of the Takeoff Series. If you haven't, the Takeoff Series is a second-level reading scheme, which is aimed at the young primary-age children learning to read using Braille. And it has always been available from the RNIB, and it comes in all kinds of different forms, from a Braille book to textbooks. And recently, maybe I think it was last year now, that HumanWare collaborated with RNIB. And we're able now to provide the full Takeoff curriculum for those that are using the BrailleNote Touch Plus. Okay, now these resources, this whole curriculum is available free of charge. That's right, free of charge, and they are available to download from the HumanWare's website. Now, the Takeoff series, you'll need to know that some prior knowledge is required for starting the Takeoff. So the children will need to be familiar with some of the signs, Braille rules before tackling Series 1 of the Takeoff. They'll need to know the alphabet and alphabetical word signs. All of this is listed in the teacher's handbook. So the resources that are available to you from HumanWare's website under the support page is the teacher's handbook. So this is a full text of 62 booklets makings of the Takeoff course. And we'll get the individual Braille files that the students will use with their BrailleNote Touch Plus. Okay, now this, all these Braille files will contain the stories and of course fun pages. Now, some of the benefits would include, obviously, learning contracted Braille in small stages. And when I used to go up and down the UK and go to a lot of schools in the UK, there'd always be that sort of barrier of going straight from grade 1 to contracted. There was never that 1.5 grade. So this really is now allowing someone to utilize refreshable Braille and learn contracted Braille in small stages. Also, a benefit is the comprehension and retention skills. Read what you know, so we're reinforcing learning, and of course makes learning fun and engaging, most importantly. I also think it's important to note that this curriculum teaches contractions and stages, and that's, the saying you should walk before you run applies here. So when you come across words like your in young, etc. If you're at the beginning of the course, these words will be read to what the student already knows. So certain contractions, such as the OR, they will not come correctly as the your sign, like YR, for example. I know this was previously mentioned to us in the past, but if you can imagine a student reading a book containing these kinds of words, they may not have already learnt that contracted word. So they'll probably learn the shorter contractions first. So just to let you know that this is a curriculum based on small stages, and it may be different to what you have been doing prior to this. What you'll need then for this curriculum is, of course, the BrailleNote Touch Plus, and the application that we'll be using is called Key BRF. The individual Braille files, as I mentioned, these are available on HumanWare's website, and there is 12 series, so there'll be 12 folders, and of course the teacher's handbook that is available in a text format, which you can download and allows you to follow the book that the students are reading on their Braille notes. So series 1, and in these different series there's different book titles. So this is an example. So series 1, we have Magic Book 1 called the Magic Box. And this series will cover the following word signs and contractions. So we have for, F-O-R, as a word sign. We have the ing sign, of as the word sign, in as a word sign, OU, out, the as a word sign, and comma. And then we go on to book 2. So each time that a student opens up these books, they're always learning something new. Now, before I actually open up my BrailleNote, I just want to go through of how this actually works. So on my left-hand side of my screen here, I have a version of the teacher's handbook, and on the right-hand side, I have what the student will see as a Braille file on their BrailleNote, for example. Now, in all series of the Takeoff, the practice pages are identified by the page number 1. Okay, so as well as introducing the child to any new Braille signs and difficult vocabularies used in the story, these pages can be used for revision. In series 1 to 6, the practice pages may include a mixture of new Braille signs, letter blends, or punctuation marks. And it is expected that yourselves, the teacher, will talk the child through the new signs and any rules which apply to their use, pointing these out as the story is read. Now, as many touch readers have difficulty with spelling, on practice pages, so pages 1, where the new signs are introduced, these are they are first given in their contracted form. So as we have on display here, we have the for sign, and in contraction is displayed. So the first part of this book will be shown in contraction, followed then by the meaning of that contraction in uncontracted form. The rest of the line then may contain words using the sign or further practice of a short form. So for example, we have the ing sign. And so the first form is shown in contraction, then it's spelled as uncontracted, and it continues to go through that to reinforce the learning. But at the very end, it starts to introduce words that contain that contraction, such as ring and springs and so on. Now, page 2 is where the actual story begins. And as the story begins, this really is promoting that comprehension skills. And until they get to the very end of this actual book, that's where the fun pages are. And at the very end of each booklet, so series 1 to 10, it's intended to stimulate the child's interest and understanding of the story and gives them the opportunity for written work based on what that child has read. So at the very end, we have the fun pages where it says, find the gap for brass, black, and creepy. And on the right-hand side, this is what it looks like on the Braille file when the student opens that up using their Key BRF book. So I want to quickly do a quick live demonstration on this. Now, I've already downloaded those BRF files from the HumanWare site, and I've placed them on my SD card. So just bear with me while I connect up my BrailleNote Touch.
And I'll take this time to vamp while Andrew does this. And a lot of times, and I talk about this a lot for anybody who's ever attended any webinars I've done or workshops, in the importance of growing into a device and kind of learning Braille, but also learning technology in lockstep. And we hear a lot of hesitancy, especially here in the States, and I can't speak for the general sort of trend in the UK and things, but I know that it's always a struggle to know, well, when do we introduce technology and how do we bring refreshable Braille into our young Braille readers, our young Braille writers? How do we get the technology into their hands? Because we're always timid or we shy away from wanting to do it because the Braille code might not be mastered. So what we're trying to do, and what this does, is it really helps us grow into our device. And this is one example of how your student can participate in these learning exercises, and then I'll be demonstrating how your student can actually employ the tables so that they can work system-wide.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, so I've now connected my BrailleNote to the screen. I'm
Main
sharing
menu,
the screen.
contacts,
We
key
should
list.
have the volume. Just confirm, is the volume coming across over there,
Email, Keymail,
Peter, or not?
ringtone volume, internet, Chrome, Play Store.
Absolutely, you're good.
It's coming across,
Speech
yeah?
on. Word
Yep.
processor
Oh, yeah.
planner,
Okay.
word processor,
Okay,
Play
I can't
Store.
hear it, that's all.
I hear it loud and clear.
Strange that I can't. Okay, so so from the main menu, the first thing we need to do, as I mentioned, is we download those resources, those folders from the website, and I've placed them all in my SD card. Please note that they are zipped originally, so you'll need to unzip them. Okay, so extract that one file, and what that will do is it will generate 12 different folders, and they're now sitting on my SD card on my BrailleNote Touch. So the teacher is then alongside me with the printed guide. I'm now the student. I'm going to go to my All Applications from the main menu. So I'm going to press the letter A, All Applications.
File Manager, Key Files. All applications,
And
bottom.
press Enter.
Main
I'm now
menu,
going to
all
go
apps,
to the app
Amazon
Key,
Music.
BRF,
Key BRF,
and press Enter.
Key BRF menu.
And I now want to open. Now just please note that at this point, when you open up a BRF file using this application, it's going to show as it is. It's going to be no translation whatsoever. So regardless if you've got contracted Braille set on your BrailleNote, computer Braille, whatever, it's not going to make any difference, because whatever's being shown in the BRF will be displayed here on my Braille display. So I'm going to open up, which now takes me to my file manager. Now, those that are not used to the file manager, quick tip whenever you're in a file manager situation is always go to the very beginning of your file manager. You want to go to the drive selection. Now, to do that, we press space with the letter D.
Drive selection, storage.
Takes you to drive selection. So here we've got storage. Storage is the internal storage on the BrailleNote Touch, which I don't want to go to. I'm going to use my next thumb key at the very front to move forward until I find SD card. There we are. I'm going to press Enter to select SD
Android
card.
folder.
That's now going to take me to my first level folders of my SD card. So I'm going to have various different folders here, and I'm going to go to the Takeoff folder. I think I've called it Takeoff.
Lost dot directed folder.
Thumb key again.
System volume in Takeoff Series folder.
I'm going to go Takeoff Series. I'm going to press Enter.
Series 1 folder.
And in here we've got all of those series that I mentioned. Series 1, it's got Series 10, 11, and 12, and so on. So I can just go forwards and backwards to whichever series that I'm currently learning. So I'm going to go to Series 1.
Takeoff-S1B1.BLF.
And I'm going to choose the book one. Okay, and remember the book one was what we've just shown before, which is the magic box, I think it was called. So I'm going to press Enter to open that. And that now opens up that magic box file. And as I showed before, we've got those contractions coming straight away. So at this point, on my Braille display and on the visual screen, those that are able to see the visual screen, I have the contraction for the FOR. After that is the uncontracted spelling of that word. And then it continues then to go to the FOR contraction, and then introduces some new or some revisited words that you would already have learned. So for example, like and so on, and go. And it continues to go through this. Remember, this is page 1. So this is the learning section of where you're going to start to learn some new contractions. So the second line, we have our ing sign and so on. And of course, at the very end of that line, it's introducing new words that will include those contractions. Now, at the very end, so obviously if I carry on going forward, we then have the story, of course. So this is where the story is now introduced. So it's really engaging that younger students. So as they're learning the story, they're of course learning contractions at the same time. And at the very end of the book, so if I jump straight to the bottom, just go back up, we have the fun page. And at this point, it asks you questions that relate to the story. So here we need to fill in those blanks. So find the gap for brass, black, and creepy. So we then have the room is, and it's blank, and the lock is, and blank, and so on. So this now would allow the student to type and type in what they believe should be the right word in that gap. Now, when you open up a document using Keyboard F, the default view is read only. So if I start to type anything at this point, so if I just take myself back to the position where I want to type something. Okay. Right, here we go. So if I want to start to type in that missing word, so we have the room is, and from the choices, I believe it's creepy. So I want to type in creepy. It's not going to allow me to type. So whatever I try and type, it's not going to allow me because I am in read-only mode. And that's what happens when you go into Keyboard F. It's in a read-only mode, avoids any editing. At this point, I'm going to revert to edit mode by pressing space with the letter X. And you'll hear that say editing mode, I hope. I can't hear it on my speakers for some strange reason. Now I am able to type. So here I can type in the missing word.
C-R-E-E-P-Y.
Okay. And then put the
dots 2, 5, 6.
And so on. So then you can fill in the rest of those blanks. So the lock is, you can take out those hyphens. So you can backspace those hyphens and type in that missing word. Once you then finish, we can then save by pressing space with the letter S. And that will then override that document that's stored on the SD card. So just bear in mind, if you're going to use these Braille files again and with another student, you may just want to download another copy just in case you accidentally save the previous student's work. Okay, so just bear that in mind. So hopefully, I mean, if you've got any questions to ask at the end, we'll come and revisit that at the very end. But I'm going to pass you over to my good friend Peter to talk about how we can change the Braille tables to use these kinds of tables on the BrailleNote Touch.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Andrew. And what I'm going to do is take over screen share here. You may have to make me a co-host, Andrew. I don't know.
I think I've already done that.
Yes, you have. Yep. Rock and roll. Okay, so we're going to share my screen, and I will also share my speech. And I will mute my screen reader here.
Alert, you are viewing a screen. Speech on demand.
And Andrew, do you see my screen?
I do.
Awesome.
Internet.
So what I'm going to do is I am on the main menu, and you should also see across the top I've turned on visual Braille output. Do you see the visual Braille output as well, Andrew?
Yes, I do.
All right. We're all cooking with gas. Okay. So what we're going to do is, and the reason I have that on is I'd like for you, so right now I'm using contracted Braille, and for those of you who are, as my good friend Jim Sullivan, who used to work at HumanWare says, light dependent, you will be able to see across the top of my screen exactly what is shown on my Braille display. This will be a tremendous help when you're working with your students, especially in this case, in this context, because you can see exactly what they are feeling on the Braille display. And this is turned on by going into your options menu, with space, going to miscellaneous options, and then going to visual Braille output. So at this point, though, what I want to do, now that I have the Braille display on, I'm going to show you how to configure the BrailleNote Touch Plus to utilize one of those learning tables. I can do this from anywhere. I'm on the main menu, and I am going to press O with space to go into my options menu. So again, O with space brings us into our options menu.
Options menu.
Now,
Miscellaneous settings.
I was at miscellaneous settings because I had just configured that Braille profile. But what I want, I'm sorry, the Braille output, but what I want to select here is the option
Configure language profiles.
that says configure language profiles. And generally this will be the first option that comes into focus when you move to the options menu. If you're somewhere else, you can always press C because we can use first letter navigation. So again, O with space to go into options. We want to find the configure language profiles option, and I'm going to press enter.
Select the language profile to configure.
And at this point, it's going to say, well, what language profile would you like to configure? And for those of you who use the BrailleNote Touch Plus regularly, you're probably aware that you can have several profiles. So you could certainly do this on your primary language profile, which is what I am going to do. But you could also choose, to configure a secondary or third or fourth or fifth or sixth profile containing one of these Braille tables. And you could name it after the table. So it's really up to you in the way you want to do this. But I'm going to choose primary. So my primary profile will be what I want to manipulate here. So when it says what language profile do I want to use,
Main menu.
It would help if I didn't hit the home button.
Contacts. Key options menu. Select.
When it asks what I want to use, I'm going to choose primary. And then it's going to bring me into the configurations for the primary language profile. And this is how you configure pieces such as your text-to-speech engine for a given profile. Maybe you're changing a voice, for a different language. You may be changing Braille tables and computer Braille tables and things, depending on what it is you'd like to work with. What I want to do, though, is when we're looking to configure one of these Braille learning tables is we need to move to the literary Braille table option. So I'm going to press the letter L for literary Braille table.
Literary Braille table.
And right now it's set to English UEB Duxbury Grade 2. So we are using Duxbury Braille tables. We're also using LibLouis tables, depending on what we're looking for. But you can see here that I'm fully in contracted Braille, and that doesn't make sense to somebody who is a new Braille reader or a new Braille writer. There's going to be tons of things I don't know, as we just saw, where when we use one of these curriculum, like the Takeoff Series, we're able to learn it in stages. So I'm going to press enter or use a cursor router key on this option, again, the literary Braille table option.
Literary Braille table.
And it brings me into a list of languages. And this is where you will see, we will go from Afrikaans to Yoruba and all sorts of Braille tables in between. We have hundreds of Braille tables that we support, so you can read and write across the device. Certainly that does not mean localizations. The localizations will be a little bit different. But you are able to configure many profiles using all sorts of Braille tables. These used to all be in alphabetical order, so English would have been E, would have been in the middle from A to Z. However, when we added in these learning tables, we wanted to take away all of the E's. There would have been a ton of E's, as you'll see, because English is now composing hundreds of Braille tables itself with all of these learning tables. So English is the first choice here, and if I press enter on English,
literary Braille table.
I will be brought into the list of English tables that are available. And it starts with Australian, and we have lots of tables here pre-unified with various codes, including the old US Braille code, American textbook, and lots of things. But as I come down, what we'll see is I will get into these learning tables. And we'll get into these method tables in a moment, as Andrew will talk about, in terms of us adding language tables to the device. But what you're seeing here is everything from Braille Easy Steps to the fingerprint method. So again, these are various Braille learning curriculum that we have available. If they have a learning table, we have that learning table employed via Duxbury. So again, you're seeing fingerprint, you're seeing a Mangold method here, you're seeing other methods that are used around the world to teach Braille. They all have corresponding Braille tables. Here in the States, a very common one would be the TSBVI clusters, but I'm just going to press the letter T to come over to the Takeoff Braille tables. Now this starts with Takeoff UEB Series 0, and that would mean fully uncontracted Braille. So Series 0 just means everything is uncontracted. However, as we just saw from Andrew, if I come down, here's Table 1. Again, I'm just using my spacebar, my next thumb key. Takeoff UEB Series 1, we know that that includes things like IN, OF, OU, all these different contractions. And this table will then employ those. So I'm going to press enter here. And this now has set my literary Braille table to be the Takeoff UEB Series 1 table. Now to illustrate this, if I come back to the main menu, and let's just say I press I for Internet. Now in the word, what we have on our Braille display is Internet, Chrome. And that is exactly as it should read, because the internet we're using is the newest version of Chrome, and it's great. But when I read this in Braille, the word internet should have two contractions in it. If I'm working in contracted Braille, there should be an IN and an ER. And then if we look at the word Chrome, it should have a CH. But that's not the case here, because we haven't been introduced to those contractions as part of the UEB curriculum. So I have an IN sign, but again, when I'm reading the word internet, it's IN sign TERNET, right? It's all spelled out. And the word Chrome is CH. There's no CH sign here. So your kiddos, your users, are not coming across contractions that are unfamiliar to them as they follow this series. And once I do move on to Series 2, then it would introduce those contractions on top of what I've learned in Series 1. So we see that this is everywhere. So I'm just on the main menu, and we're seeing that it's being applied. If I come into a document, so I'm going to press W and move my focus to the word processor.
Speech on. Word processor.
Again, we
Keyword.
don't have the word .45W as shown here because we haven't been introduced to that yet. That contraction has not been introduced. Going to press enter.
Keyword menu. Create.
All right, here's create. Again, no EA sign. We haven't learned that yet, but I'm going to press enter on create.
Edit box.
All
End
right,
of document.
and I'm going to write a quick sentence, and I'm going to turn speech off so that it doesn't talk over me. But let's just say I write something like, I am having a great day here today. And let's just say, oh, that'll be fine. Now, in this sentence,
Peter, just press enter at the very beginning, just so that everyone, like the penny,
drop
can
this
see
down.
visually on the screen.
There.
Keep going. I think it's
Do
not
this.
come
How's
across.
that?
There we go.
So what we're seeing here, though, is in this sentence, in theory, we would have contractions such as great would be GRT, day would be .5D, here would be .5H, today would be TD, and so on. The only contraction that is shown in the sentence in I am having a great day today is the ing in having, which is perfect because that's all we've been introduced to thus far in this scenario, in this sentence. So as I write or as I read in Keyword or anywhere in Chrome, maybe I'm reading a book in Easy Reader Plus, these Braille tables are applied system-wide. And it's a great way, again, as I mentioned earlier when I was bringing this up, it's a great way for your student, your user, to grow into their device. Andrew and I do lots of presentations for lots of places, and we have the one slide that always comes to mind, and it is something like 90% of kiddos under the age of 4 are exposed to technology in some way. And I think in particular it's referring to YouTube. And for better or worse, we can go on and on about the merits of that. Is that a good thing or not? And that's not the point of the slide. The point is that technology is being introduced to sighted kiddos very, very early on. I have lots of friends who have 1- and 2-year-olds. I have a 3-month-old, and I do not play YouTube videos for my 3-month-old as of yet. But she is absolutely going to know what technology is by the age of 8 months or 1 year. And she already is, in theory, because of the pandemic, having so much exposure to FaceTime. So she can meet her grandma and other relatives. And, you know, it really is something that we need to be conscious of, because if we don't introduce technology to our Braille readers at young ages, we're going to be hindering them, as opposed to just, you know, it's always been, well, we're going to wait, it's too much. And I think we are seeing an absolute shift in when we are introducing technology. And again, there are many other factors that come into play. I just really think this will illustrate and help bring technology into the fold for a younger kiddo. Now, again, once we're done with this, and this will apply system-wide. So even if I want to learn, what if I want to save this file or spell check this file? When I come into the context menu, I'm seeing that, again, file functions. We don't have a TION sign. Let's just say I come into my editing functions. I want to spell check this. We don't have a CH sign in check because we haven't learned it yet. So it really will stick with you across the entire device. These Braille tables will be for reading and writing, of course, in documents, but also will be applicable in any menus, web pages, books, anything you're bringing in. So it is a neat thing, and we hope that it's going to be very useful. And I'm going to toss it back over to you, Andrew, because I think we're going to talk about tracking student progress.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. And just to let everyone know, I mean, probably people may be thinking about, well, which series does it introduce certain signs or words? Now, there's a big list, again, on the teacher's handbook. Yes. It's also available on the HumanWare Buddy application that we're just going to touch base on in just a moment. And it gives you a list of when those contractions are being introduced. So, for example, if a student wants to know where the ST sign comes in play, I think it's on book 2, I believe. Again, it's all listed there in the teacher's handbook. So without further ado, let's go on to the tracking of students' progress. And this introduces the HumanWare Buddy application. For those that don't know, the HumanWare Buddy application, it's an application, a free application available on the Play Store if you've got an Android device, or on the App Store if you've got an iPhone or iOS device. And what this application brings is a lot of resources to you. We know that it's very hard to fit everything in your busy schedule in the day to learn a product and to teach a product to a student. So we have created many of these useful how-to guides on all of the products that we distribute and manufacture. So I'm going to share my screen, but we've also introduced on a recent update a My Buddies icon, which allows you to create students' profile and assign learning tasks for that student, as well as then checking the progress of where they're currently at in their learning objectives. So let me just quickly share my iPhone screen. Hopefully the technology is going to work.
Faith and confidence. That's all you need. Faith and confidence. And what's nice about this portion in terms of sharing, and tracking progress is it allows you, it's not, going to give you some kind of statistics report, but it is going to allow you to slowly or methodically kind of make sure your user is going to get what he or she needs out of the device. And a lot of times we struggle because we don't know A, where to start, or B, just what is and what isn't necessary, or what should we really be focusing on. And so this can kind of help pare that down and really narrow our focus into what is going to be relevant for our kiddos.
Okay, so here we go. So they've got the HumanWare Buddy application. So I guess it's again available on the Play Store and the App Store free of charge. You will need to create an account. Now, once you create your account, it then remembers your credentials. They're not passed on to anyone else. It's automatically just saved, and you'll be able to log on, and you'll be presented in the MyHub dashboard. Now, at the MyHub dashboard, you then have several items that you can select. And I'll talk you through this briefly before we go into the main topic of the tracking of the student's progress. We have our how-to guides, which is the first item on the top left of our screen. If we go into the how-to guides, this will present all of the products that HumanWare currently support. And if it's a product that you are using, maybe it's your student, they're using the BrailleNote Touch. So I'm going to select the BrailleNote Touch, and it's then categorized on which application that perhaps they want to learn. So if it's the word processor, you can go to the first item here called keyword word processor, and perhaps you want to know how to create a new document. So I'm going to click on creating a new document, and here it gives you step by step on what you'll need to do. So I'm going to magnify that screen up. So it gives you step by step on how to create a new document. From here, we can share the resources. So there's a button at the very bottom of the screen to share, allow you to share it to someone, maybe another teacher, a parent. You can print it off. You can save it for a later date, or you can add it as your favorites. At the top right of this screen, there is a favorites button that will allow you to review that at a later date, and will be under your favorites category. So I'm just going to add that to my favorite there. So again, it's available in all kinds of different products. And so if I want to go to my favorites again on the second item down, I've just saved that. At a later date, it's there, creating a new document. I can review it as many times as I want. Also in the application, it allows you to search for tasks. So there is a search item, and there is a filter option as well. So if you're learning, maybe it's a desktop magnifier or a daisy play, such as the stream, or an embosser, you could then enter some keywords to try and pinpoint that task in hand. So maybe it's something to do with the internet, perhaps it's printing, embossing. You can type in those keywords and it will bring up all the relative documents that are relevant to the keywords that you've typed. We also have how-to videos. So all of our snapshot tutorial videos are under our YouTube channel. Again, if we go onto the videos, it will take us straight directly to our YouTube channel and allows you to visit any webinars and of course some useful how-to videos that we have introduced. And the notifications, which 3% of you today have received a notification to tell you about this webinar. And this is really to keep updated with what's happening at HumanWare. So maybe there's a new webinar that's approaching. Maybe it's an interest to you. Maybe it's new software that we're going to introduce. So you'll be notified by the notification option. So if you haven't already got this application, or if you're using the app, maybe you need to update it if you haven't already done so to get some of these extra benefits. But the main topic though is the tracking of your students learning by using the My Buddies item. So this is again a new item that we've introduced. So I'm going to click on My Buddies. Now I'm going to be prompted that I do not have any buddies because this is the first time that I'm using this. So I'm going to showcase how we use this. I'm going to choose close and I'm going to start to add some buddies in. So at the very top right, we have an add button. Okay, and we put the student's name. So here I'm going to put in my student. His name's Andrew, and he is attending the HumanWare Academy. And I'm then going to press the save button. That's now created my first student called Andrew. I'm also got another student on my case. So in some cases, a lot of TVRs, QTVRs, they have several students that they have to visit. It's a different school. So I'm here going to add Peter. And I'm going to put here, your school is Windy City.
It's a good school.
So that's my two students' name that I support. I support Peter and I support Andrew. And let's say today I'm visiting Andrew, and Andrew has the BrailleNote Touch. He's just received. So I've got no lessons scheduled at this point. So I've clicked on Andrew and it opens up my lessons. And at the moment, there are no lessons that are active. So I'm going to press on the plus button at the very bottom here to add a lesson. And it will take me to some options. So firstly, it's going to ask me what is the product that Andrew is learning. So I'm going to choose that by selecting an item. And I'm going to select the BrailleNote Touch. And then we have select course type. So I'm going to press on the select course type, and I have various different options here from beginner, intermediate, advanced, and custom. Now, beginner, intermediate, and advanced, these are predefined lesson plans that HumanWare has assigned. Now, if for whatever reason, maybe you want to, you've got someone who's really just wants to learn all kinds of different stuff in one go. Maybe it's the internet, emails, different types of lesson plans that you want to arrange. At that point, I suggest you would select custom. And I'll come on to that because Peter is going to be having a custom lesson. But for Andrew, he's a beginner on the BrailleNote Touch. I'm going to select beginner and I'm going to click save. And that's my lesson created for Andrew. So let's go take you back to that very home screen again, just in case we ever get lost in this application. So I'm going to go back to MyHub. I'm going to choose My Buddies. Now in My Buddies, I will have, of course, my Andrew and Peter. If I take myself back here, I've got Peter, there's Andrew. I'm going to click on Andrew. Already it says BrailleNote Touch Plus beginner 0% completed. So let's click on Andrew. Opens up my active lessons. And I'm going to click on beginner. So clicking on beginner will open up all of the tasks that are actually associated to this beginner's course. So the first lesson that I have here is the overview of ports, buttons, and hardware. So let's open that up again by selecting that item. And that will open up one of those how-to guides and will give me information about all these, the buttons and the ports. So again, I'm going to zoom in so that those that are able to see the screen. Here I've got the how-to guide here. It gives me the overview of ports and buttons. And it allows me now as the teacher to really help the student learn what are all these buttons on the BrailleNote Touch. Now, once you've completed this one, once you're happy that the student knows where to plug in the charger, where the volume keys are, etc., we can then tick that off. So to the right of that item, there's a checkbox that we can just check. And then you'll get prompted, the task is marked as complete. And we can continue down this list. So we have recharging the Touch Plus's battery, turning the BrailleNote on and off. And eventually, once you've progressed through the course, I'm just going to tick on recharging the Touch Plus's battery. And I'm just now going to take us back to my lesson plans that I have. We can now see that the percentage has now changed, 8%. So Andrew is now 8% through the beginner's course. Again, if I take
the other
myself...
piece that I'll mention here, Andrew, is, and for anybody out there, because we're not using VoiceOver, this app is fully accessible. There is just an awful Zoom bug where when we, because normally I would do these demos, and there's a Zoom bug where VoiceOver and speech just goes away. So I would be fumbling all over the place. So this is accessible with VoiceOver and usable, and it works great. But for right now, when we do these webinars, it's very, very difficult to illustrate how it's accessible because it just doesn't work due to casting and sharing the screen the way that VoiceOver comes through to the screen share. So keep that in mind for anybody out there who is a VoiceOver user, that this does work, certainly works with VoiceOver.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Peter. So at the very beginning then, I've got My Buddies. Just a quick review, you can see Andrew's through 8% through the beginner's course. Peter, however, hasn't got any courses set. So I'm now going to create a custom lesson for Peter. So let's go into Peter by tapping his name. Again, it will then open up all the lessons that, that Peter has taken before. So if Peter has taken any previous lessons, all of these will be listed under this lesson's title. I'm going to press the Add button. Select an item. I'm going to choose the BrailleNote Touch Plus again. And this time on the course type, I'm going to choose Custom and then Proceed. So at this time, what happens, it will give me a long list of all of the guides. And there's a lot of guides as I scroll up and down. There's a lot of guides that are available to, but it allows you as the teacher to customize the lesson plan. So perhaps maybe Peter wants to know how to do reading emails. Okay, there's an option that's read emails. I'm just going to tick replying to an email. I'd like him to learn that. Forwarding an email, deleting an email, and checking for new emails. Perhaps that's all I want him to do. Just checking for emails. I'm now going to hit the Save button, which is at the top right of the screen, and that will create my lesson plan for Peter. Okay, so we now have the custom lesson followed by the percentage, which is 0, of course. Let's go into that custom lesson by pressing the custom lesson, and that will open up all those relevant guides that I've just selected. So again, we can click on checking for new emails. That will open up that relevant guide. And we as the teachers can go through that and help the student learn how to check for the new emails. And once they're confident of checking their new emails, we can tick that off. And again, going forwards, deleting an email, and so on. Let's take myself back here. So now, as I look under Peter's profile, we can see that he's doing the custom course and he is 20% through that course. Let's take a look at the very home screen of the My Buddies. So a quick overview, if you've got more than one student, it's a great way to really see the progression of the students learning. So straight away, I can see Peter's at 20% of the course of his custom, Andrew 8% of beginners. You may have more than 2. I know in some cases there's TVIs out there that have a lot of students that they need to support in various different schools. There's also an option at the top here under My Buddies of student's name. Okay, so if you have got a lot of students, and of course you can jump straight to that student by typing in their name at the very top. And that's it. That sort of finishes the webinar and the learn objectives of today's webinar. I'm going to open the floor to some questions, but before I do, I want to disclose something exciting that I know that many of you have been waiting for. I'm just going to stop my screen here and share a different screen. Now, many of you have been waiting for this for a long, long time. It's language tables using method 2. I could almost hear people sort of saying, yes, Peter, at the background. Now, this is an upcoming Keysoft version. So what's going to be included in this upcoming Keysoft version will allow you to utilize the method 2 Braille tables for languages, making the BrailleNote Touch one of the first and only refreshable Braille display device to use this kind of Braille table. Now, what this means is that you can teach Spanish, French, German. The student can actually learn the method 2 tables without having to interact with computer Braille and switching between contracted and uncontracted, or even having to learn the full native Braille code. What method 2 predominantly uses is, of course, UEB for punctuations, grade 1 for the characters, and the native accent signs. Now, many benefits here include the students will no longer need to know that computer Braille or switch between different Braille codes. The student uses the correct Braille method being introduced for languages and allows your students to be on the same playing field as their sighted peers, meaning that they do not need to learn a completely new Braille code or new language. They'll just need to obviously know the letters and, of course, the accent signs. Now, any US friends that are joining this webinar, we also have the method 3, which is identical to method 2. So method 2 is the UCAF of the learning table. Method 3 is the banner, but basically they are identical. So when we go in to choose your language tables, your Braille tables, as Peter previously just shown, you will notice there's going to be the French method 2 UK or French method 3 US. It's identical, same rules. It's just obviously called something different depending if you're in Northern America or if you're in UK. Okay, so we open the floor for some questions, Peter.
Rock and roll. Let's see if anybody has anything to wonder.
Okay, I'm going to enable the raise hands. So if you do want to ask us a question live, by all means you can do. Press Alt plus the letter Y. That will raise your hand. And when you get asked to unmute yourself, just press Alt and the letter A, and that will allow you to unmute. Alternatively, you can post your questions in the chat or the Q&A direct. So we have some questions already coming across in the chat. Okay, let's have a quick look. Okay, so we do have a message here. Error message, require field first name is only valid in character when trying to create an account. So I'm assuming here, and this is to Samad Ali, that you're trying to create an account on the HumanWare Buddy application. By all means, if you want to send us an email to let us know what account you're trying to set up, of course, it's looking for characters. You probably may have maybe a special symbol or something that it's not liking. I'll have to look into that as to why it's not. But if you want to email us, by all means, send an email to humanwarelive@humanware.com, and we can look into that for you. Okay, question from Christopher. Can you disable all the messages and notifications which are distracting when we boot up the Touch Plus? The answer is yes, you can. And there's a number of ways of disabling those notifications. So it's dependent on what notification is coming up. You may get notifications that are coming from the Play Store. You may be getting notifications happening from individual applications themselves. So it does depend on which application notification you want to disable. But as a general rule, the way that I would encourage you to do is go to that, navigate to the application first. Don't press enter. Press the contextual menu by pressing space with the letter M, and then go to the all app info. Now in there will be an option for your notifications. By default, they're probably enabled. You can just disable them, just uncheck them. That's the way that I would suggest you go. But maybe Peter, you got an alternative method.
No, you're right, Andrew. And generally, a lot of those notifications usually are coming from the Play Store. So updating blah, 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 or successfully updated, blah, blah, blah. So you definitely want to move your focus to the application, open the context menu, select Open App Info, which will pull up all the information for that given app. And then at that point, you can disable the notifications. You will have an option that will allow you to do that in there. And I think it is listed. I'm checking right now. It should be listed as, let's see here. I've done this a million times, and every now and then it's under app notifications. So again, find the app, context menu, select Open App Info, and then come to app notifications, and you can turn those off.
Awesome. Okay, great stuff. Okay, so the next one then we have is, can you recap as to where you can find the literary tables again on the Buddy app? So I think you're referring to information about those learning
what
tables.
What contractions are in each one.
Yeah. Now you can, if you go onto the HumanWare Buddy application, it's actually at the very bottom category. So when you've got the category of keyword, word processor, email, just scroll all the way down to the bottom. You'll have English learning tables. In there, you will have multiple documents that will give you further information about the learning tables. It gives you information about what tables are included, and of course, how to use those Braille learning tables in Keysoft. Alternatively, directly go to our HumanWare website support page on the BrailleNote Touch Plus site, and you can download, again, resources from there. Question from Wendy then, if you wanted to give the student experience of a hard copy, can you emboss the Takeoff BRF files? The answer is yes. You can download those BRF files from HumanWare site, and you can then emboss them directly to Embosser.
Absolutely. And the other thing to keep in mind there is, if you are using the Duxbury Braille translator, you can utilize those same learning tables for anything, for any story, for any worksheet, for anything you want, because I'm a huge proponent of hard copy Braille. It's a great way to learn Braille. We need to learn spatial concepts and tracking and trailing and all of that. You can utilize those same learning tables that we have on the Touch Plus. Those are all available in Duxbury as well. So you can emboss hard copies of anything and apply those tables. Of course, these are BRF files, so the student worksheets are BRF files, so you don't need to run them through a Braille table because somebody's already created them to follow those tables. So you can just emboss the BRF, and it's going to be exactly what you want it to be because it's been created by a Brailleist or by somebody using a Braille translator, so you don't need to run or apply a table because they've already done it for you. But if you have a story about, I don't know, whatever story you're reading in class in 3rd or 4th grade or 2nd grade, whatever it may be, you can emboss that using these Braille tables through the Duxbury Braille translator.
Thanks, Peter. Another question, is there a list of how the BrailleNote Touch shows layout features, for example, paragraph, center, etc.? I believe there is a guide that explains some of the formatting. So, you know, how to center a line, or how to create bold, or how to do italic, or other format parts of your document, maybe heading styles, for example. So there are some useful guides on how to tackle that. Again, all in our HumanWare Buddy application under the word processor category. Okay, thanks. Student is only 7 years, so does not need to hear them. That's from Christopher. Okay, thank you. Hard copy also available. Yeah, hard copy also available. Nicely bound from RNIB. I'm not sure if you have to pay though for that. Maybe wrong. Can you walk through how to put the files on the SD cards, and what card do I need to buy? Unfortunately, Wendy, it's something that I can't walk you through, but basically, if you've got a USB, you can plug them in a USB. It doesn't have to be SD card. If you want to plug it into USB, then some computers nowadays, they do have the SD card readers. If not, you can use a USB SD card reader. But basically, just you go to that My Computer icon, and you can just drag and drop those files once you've downloaded them.
And then once you do that, it's a matter of, I mean, we have snapshot tutorial videos on how to use the file manager, Wendy. So that's how you would access them from the Touch Plus. It's a matter of knowing how to use the file manager, getting up to drive selection, choosing the appropriate drive, and then either copying them over to your device or opening them directly from that removable storage.
Okay, and the Takeoff files are already on the Touch Plus SD card, right? As a question, I believe they should be. I'm not sure if they started to be introduced yet, but the plan is that these Takeoff files are hoping to get them on the SD card that comes with the device out of the box. But if you haven't got a fairly new one, then as I mentioned, you can download those straight from HumanWare's website. Another question from Wendy. Yeah, there's different size cards. I mean, you can go with a 16 gigabyte SD card, 32 gigabyte SD cards. There isn't a particular model that I would suggest. I mean, you can always speak with the HumanWare tech team if you are concerned about that. But generally, most SD cards will work. Yeah,
and I mean, you ideally, and depending on where they come from, you can have 5 SD cards and they all work fine, and then you get one that doesn't, or depending on where they're manufactured or where they come from. There's nothing abnormal about just getting any SD card. It's physical storage today is very limitless in terms of what you want to do. I mean, I would just keep it in that 32 gig range, 16, 8, 4. It doesn't even matter, and you're going to be just fine. You're not going to fill it up or have anything to worry about.
So no one wants to raise their hands, and by all means,
no one wants to unmute.
No,
come on, it's morning over here.
They're all shy.
Oh, Alan, dude.
Oh, yeah, Alan likes to talk. Here we go, Alan.
Alan.
Hi, Alan.
Good afternoon, good morning, gentlemen. Well, I think I just wanted to thank you, first of all, for hosting the webinar today, and for all our friends in education for joining us today. I appreciate people take time out of their busy days. And, you know, people still have Apex units or the original BrailleNote Touch. Please contact us. We can do deals to get them up to the Touch Plus and the power of the Touch Plus in what it's doing. I know some teachers also like to use the learning tables from New Zealand and South Africa. They sort of mix and match, and that they're all there as well. So, you know, I mean, it's fantastic, the list that's there. And I think also to thank the RNIB, because they've been tremendous partners in cooperating with us and helping us to have all this content and series available for people to download and use. So really, well, just to say thank you very much. Contact your local HumanWare representative if you need to be upgrading your equipment at any time. And the other thing is, we're now going back into schools. So the schools permit us to do so, and it's safe for everybody to do so. We're going into schools with PPE, so we can do the demonstrations, and we can also do demonstrations individually online as well, if that's the preferred medium. So thank you very much. The next webinar, of course, is 13th of May. So hopefully that date is in people's diaries here in the UK. Again, and especially thank you to Peter for joining us. Had to forego your morning stroll down to Harry Carey's at Navy Pier for your morning breakfast, Peter. So,
well, you know how I roll. I definitely like a big breakfast every morning at Navy Pier. Yes.
So that was all. Thank you very much indeed.
No, thanks so much, and we really appreciate doing this. And I know from the standpoint of getting out there, it's been really tough for all of us, and myself included here in the States. I mean, I'd love, and at some point I'll show my face in the UK, but I would love to. I just cannot wait to get back in front of everybody. I do a lot of that here on a weekly basis, all over the country, all over North America, and we know it's been a challenge. So hopefully sooner than later we can do these things in person, and really appreciate everybody attending, and hopefully this is useful. And always, we're here to provide resources, whether it's these live webinars, whether it is coming from how-to videos. If there are videos that would help you, please suggest them. HumanWareLive@humanware.com. Feel free to send emails there with suggestions for topics, for content. If there are other ways we can be assisting, I mean, just let us know, because we are all about support and providing sort of a continuum of support, and looking at ways we can bring things forward. So I'm always happy to do it. Andrew helps me out at midnight, so I can help him out at 8 a.m. He's always doing things in the middle of the night for me. So.
Well, we have someone who's raised their hand. It's Chris Brady. So
Chris, awesome.
I'll allow you to talk. If you unmute yourself by pressing Alt plus the letter A. Hi, Chris.
Hello, and thanks very much for the webinar. When you were doing the first part and you were filling in your BRF files and you just filled in the little gaps, is there a way, can you actually save as? Because that
Yes,
would
you
be
can.
an economical way to do things. You save the file as the student's name, so they've got that file, and then any other files that they're modifying, you can save those as. So you don't need to, you won't need to download any other files, as long as you make a folder with all their work that they've completed in. Probably that would be a good thing, wouldn't it?
A very good suggestion, Chris. Yes, so you do have the options of save as, very much like when the word processor. So if you rather do a save as shortcut, then you can, and of course then you can save it whichever directory you prefer. You don't have to. It doesn't override the hard. Let's say the actual main
so
file.
space with S would be save, where you would just save any of your changes. Backspace with S would be save as, where you can then modify the name or the storage path.
Yeah. Okay, then. Well, thanks very much, because that's a useful thing to do, isn't it? Really.
Absolutely, Chris.
It is.
Absolutely.
Cheers, Chris.
Right, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, a couple more questions. Is the guide on the Buddy app about how to connect to an embosser? Yes, there is. How to connect to an embosser via Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, various different guides there. Will this be added to the webinars YouTube available via the Buddy app? So all of our videos, webinars are recorded, and they will be published to our YouTube channel in no more than a month's time. So that should be there at some stage. Okay.
And I do think, and next time we do this, Andrew, we're gonna make a poll about optimal time, because so Andrew and I mean, one of our goals, and Alan, pointed it out, but we're trying to do these at different times. We do them for North America, obviously at different times than we would for folks in different parts of the world. So any feedback on times that may be preferred is always appreciated. And we know there's a difference as well between education and consumers or users. So it certainly is, we hope this is a good time for you. We certainly appreciate everyone who's here. So
yeah, it's a great point. Great point. Okay, well, thank you very much. That's it for today. It's we've finished pretty much bang on time, Peter. It's done pretty well there. So thank you very much for joining us, everyone. Really appreciate your time to come and visit us on the HumanWare Live webinar. Thanks very much to Peter for your time as well. We appreciate that. So till then, we'll see you next week on our next webinar. Is it next week?
May 13th, a couple weeks. I know you're impatient, but you have to wait 2 weeks.
Couple of weeks time. And if you need to stay tuned, remember that HumanWare Buddy application will give you that notification.
Rock
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.